and we might not be at this turning point in humanity's fateful fight against climate change were it not for the man who has come to speak to you here today. When the science was relatively obscure, when the great majority were unaware, when it was not politically expedient to talk about it, he brought the threat of climate change decisively into the popular sphere. You do that in only one way. Yes, you must be an expert on arcane calculations, methods, and projections of climate science. Yes, you must be an expert on the economic consequences on jobs, trade, and finance, on technological issues of clean energy and fossil fuels, on the complex implications of political influence and power. But that is not enough. You must also be able to awake understanding in people, give them a vision of the future, and move them to act to reach out for that future. That is his greatest contribution, and that is why I always look forward to hearing him. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you and listen to Mr. Al Gore.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and I would like to express my profound gratitude to Ivo de Boer for those very kind words and, frankly, for his incredible labors in making this entire enterprise possible. Ivo, to you and the staff of the Secretariat for your work year after year, and especially this year. Thank you so much. We are all deeply in debt to you. Thank you very much. I would like to also express thanks to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for his extraordinary leadership and his staff's hard work. His personal efforts from attending the talks in Bali and Poznan and now here, and his work in organizing the UN Climate Summit have helped to invigorate and add much needed momentum to these talks. May I also express appreciation to our Danish hosts and the president of the conference, Connie Hedegaard, for their efforts on behalf of this summit. I arrived here before dawn yesterday, and at a breakfast meeting, I asked a colleague, someone in the NGO community, how do you feel about the conference? And he said, I feel fine. And something about the look on his face made me think of a story that I first heard 30 years ago in my home state of Tennessee, when I was a young congressman driving from town hall meetings in my rural farming district. Late one Saturday night, I was listening to a program called the Grand Ole Opry on the car radio. It's a country music iconic program, and in those days, it occasionally featured a wonderful comedian named Cousin Minnie Pearl. She wore a straw hat with a price tag still attached, and her character was from Grinders Switch, Tennessee. Her real name was Sarah Cannon, and she was a very lovely and wonderful woman, but her character was quite compelling. And she told a story that evening, as I listened to it on the car radio, about a farmer who was involved in an accident, and he sued the other driver for damages. And the other driver hired a lawyer, and this lawyer put the farmer on the witness stand for cross-examination and asked, isn't it true that immediately after this accident you said, I feel fine? And the farmer said, well, it's not that simple. You see, I was taking my cow to town in the back of my truck, and this fella, and the lawyer said, wait a minute. Your Honor, we're in the middle of a trial here. We don't want to hear a long, involved story. Just answer the question, yes or no. Did you or did you not say immediately after the accident, "I feel fine"? And the farmer said, "Well, I was leading up to that. You see, I was taking my cow to town in the back of my truck, and this fella came driving across the center line and ran right into my truck and knocked it over. Threw me out, threw the cow out. I was on one side, the cow was on the other, and the policeman came up and took one look at that cow and said, she is suffering." Pulled out his gun and shot her right between the eyes. Then he came around to my side of the truck and said, "How do you feel?" So I said, "I feel fine." Now, ladies and gentlemen, the point of that story is the alternative to success here in Copenhagen is unacceptable. And to all those who are feeling all kinds of emotions at this stage in the negotiations, my plea to you is to realize what is at stake and reach a result that will give momentum to this process, make it a success, and set the stage for the completion of a binding international treaty next year. This is the challenge of the next 3 days. This historic gathering is being attended by leaders from almost every nation in the world, some of them already here, most of them due to arrive in the next 48 hours. But there is one important part of humankind not present and not formally represented at these negotiations. Even though I have no credentials entitling me to speak for them, I would nevertheless like to advocate their interests. They are the generations that will follow us. The decisions made here will powerfully The decisions made here in Copenhagen will powerfully determine the shape and the nature of the future that they will inherit from us. They will not care very much about some of the disputes that are raging here in this conference. They will find it difficult to understand how some of these disputes could be allowed to interfere with the result that is essential for the survival of our civilization. We have 3 days to avoid a failure here that would delay the actions necessary to save their prospects. A delay at this point could call into question the viability of this undertaking. We cannot allow Copenhagen to become Doha. More is at stake than many seem to realize. Now that global civilization is interconnected on every continent as never before, we here must reclaim our ability to use the rule of law as an instrument of human redemption. That is our challenge. The future of our civilization is threatened as never before. We do have the means to secure that future. The question we must answer is whether or not we have the political will. Today, we dumped another 90 million tons of global warming pollution into the thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet, as if it is an open sewer. More than 25 million of those tons were added to the ocean today, further increasing the acidity of the entire world ocean toward levels that could soon threaten everything that makes a shell or a reef, including the tiny zooplankton at the base of the ocean food chain. More than 1 billion people rely on fish as their principal source of protein.